In 1965, the US Air Force created a job so insane that when they first explained it to the men who'd have to do it, one of them answered with a sentence so blunt it became the unit's official motto. And it's still stitched onto their patches today. The job was this: fly your aircraft directly at the enemy missile site. Not around it, not above it, at it. Let them see you. Let them lock their radar onto you. Let them fire. Because the only moment a hidden missile site reveals its location is the instant it tries to kill something. And your aircraft is the something. Deliberately becoming the target so the missile crew would switch on and expose themselves. Statistically, it became the most dangerous flying job of the entire Vietnam War. The men who volunteered called themselves the Wild Weasels. And the reason this suicidal-sounding job had to be invented at all comes down to a single afternoon in July 1965, when a new Soviet weapon appeared over North Vietnam and made the American air campaign almost impossible. They built an aircraft whose mission was to get shot at on purpose. And the terrifying part is that it worked. Before the summer of 1965, American aircraft over North Vietnam had a fairly comfortable arrangement. The threats were anti-aircraft guns, dangerous but limited. Fly high enough and fast enough, and the guns couldn't touch you. So strike packages flew predictable routes, at predictable altitudes, day after day. Then the Soviet Union delivered the SA-2 guideline, a surface-to-air missile that could reach 60,000 feet, higher than anything the Americans flew. On the 24th of July, 1965, an SA-2 shot down an American F-4C. It was the first of 110 US aircraft that would be lost to surface-to-air missiles in Southeast Asia. And it instantly destroyed the illusion of safe altitude. Washington ordered a retaliation strike against the missile batteries, but by the time the American aircraft arrived, the launchers had packed up and vanished. That was the real problem, and it was worse than the missile itself. The SA-2 didn't just make the sky lethal, it made it lethal from somewhere nobody could find. Which left the Air Force with an impossible question. How do you destroy something you can't locate? The answer they arrived at was almost absurd in its simplicity. A missile site is invisible until it switches on its guidance radar to attack. So, give it something worth attacking. The plan was to take a two-seat fighter and put a pilot up front and an electronic warfare officer in the back with equipment that could detect enemy radar. The crew would deliberately fly into the missile's engagement zone. The enemy radar would switch on and lock. And in those seconds, the man in the back seat would trace the signal back to its source, and they would attack the site before it could finish killing them. When this was first briefed to one of the electronic warfare officers, a B-52 veteran named Jack Donovan, his response entered aviation legend. He said, roughly, "You want me to fly in the back of a tiny little fighter with a crazy fighter pilot who thinks he's invincible, home in on a SAM site in North Vietnam, and shoot it before it shoots me? You gotta be shitting me." The phrase stuck. Shortened to 4 letters, YGBSM became the unofficial motto of the entire community, and it is proudly displayed on squadron patches to this day. The Wild Weasels battle cry wasn't a war chant. It was a man's honest, appalled reaction to being told what his job was. And then they went and did it. The first Wild Weasels flew a modified two-seat F-100F, a decent aircraft, but not a fast one by the standards of that war. On the 22nd of December, 1965, Captain Alan Lamb and Jack Donovan, the same man who'd sworn at the briefing, were covering a strike force northwest of Hanoi when Donovan began picking up radar signals and called out coordinates. Lamb flew toward them and spotted what nobody had managed to spot before: a camouflaged radar van. They attacked and destroyed the site. The first Wild Weasel kill in history. The concept worked, but look at the date just 2 days earlier. On the 20th of December, an F-100F, crewed by Captains John Pitchford and Robert Trier, was hit by anti-aircraft fire on one of these missions. Both men ejected. Pitchford was wounded and captured. Trier was killed on the ground, exchanging fire with North Vietnamese troops. The first Wild Weasel loss came before the first Wild Weasel victory. And it kept going that way. After roughly 7 weeks of combat, the losses were so severe that the first Wild Weasel unit was declared combat ineffective. The aircraft simply wasn't survivable enough for the job. The Wild Weasels proved their idea worked and proved it was killing them in the same fortnight. So the Air Force did the only thing it could. It found them a faster aircraft. The replacement was the F-105 Thunder Chief, the Thud, a big, brutally fast fighter bomber. 2-seat versions were adapted into the definitive Wild Weasel of the war. And with better aircraft came a harder doctrine, summed up in 4 words the crews adopted as their creed. First in, last out. Think about what that actually meant. The Weasels arrived over the target before the bombers, alone, to hunt down the missile sites and clear a path. Then, when the bombers had finished and turned for home, the Weasels stayed behind, still circling, still exposed, still baiting radars until every last strike aircraft was safely out. They were first into the most dangerous airspace on Earth and the last to leave it. They were also, by then, more heavily armed for the task, carrying anti-radiation missiles designed to ride an enemy radar beam straight back to the antenna transmitting it. Every other pilot's goal was to spend as little time as possible in the missile envelope. The Weasel's job was to live there and to leave last. Which is how one man came to fly what may be the most extraordinary single mission of the war. On the 19th of April, 1967, Major Leo Thorsness was flying a Weasel mission over North Vietnam when his wingman was shot down. Thorsness stayed in the area to cover the men on the ground, and while doing so, engaged and shot down an enemy MiG. Running low on fuel, he headed for a tanker, refueled, and then, learning that the rescue effort was in trouble, turned around and went back into the same lethal airspace. He attacked more enemy fighters to protect the rescue aircraft, and when he finally broke away, he escaped at low level on afterburner with fighters chasing him. He landed with his tanks essentially dry, gliding into a forward base. 11 days later, Thorsness was shot down by a MiG-21 on another Wild Weasel mission. He was captured and tortured, and spent nearly 6 years as a prisoner of war. He was awarded the Medal of Honor while in captivity, but the award was kept secret, so his captors couldn't use it against him. He came home in 1973. The mission that earned him America's highest honor was, by Wild Weasel standards, simply a bad day at work. Here's what makes this more than a Vietnam story. The mission never went away. It became permanent. The aircraft kept changing. F-105s gave way to Phantoms, Phantoms to the F-16, and today the mission is shared with specialized electronic attack aircraft and the F-35. The technology transformed beyond recognition. But the fundamental job is exactly what Lamb and Donovan invented over Hanoi in 1965. Fly at the thing that is trying to kill you, make it reveal itself, and destroy it first. And its influence runs deeper than most people realize. The reason modern air defense crews are trained to switch their radars on for only a handful of seconds before shutting down and moving, the discipline that has defined ground-based air defense ever since, exists because of the Weasels. 60 years on, the mere possibility that someone is hunting your radar still dictates how you fight. So that's the Wild Weasels. Not a weapon, not a wonder jet, a tactic so counterintuitive that the men asked to perform it responded with disbelief, and then flew it anyway, first in and last out for the entire war. Here's the lesson underneath it. Every other solution to the missile problem was about avoidance. Fly higher, fly lower, jam it, dodge it. The Weasels won by inverting the problem entirely. If the enemy only shows himself when he shoots, then the fastest way to find him is to make him shoot at you. It's the kind of answer that only works if someone is willing to be the bait. And that's the uncomfortable truth at the center of this story. The Wild Weasel wasn't really a technology. It was a decision, made by volunteers to be the most dangerous man in the sky by being the most obvious one. YGBSM started as an insult to a briefing. It ended up on the patch. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.